Florida teachers are trying to figure out how the Parental Rights in Education Act, which opponents call the Don't Say Gay bill, will affect their classrooms. Governor Ron DeSantis signed it into law yesterday.
We will make sure that parents can send their kids to school to get an education, not an indoctrination.
The law bans instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity from kindergarten through third grade. NPR's Melissa Block reports.
Now, there must be an initial assumption here. Kindergarten to third grade, that's so little. It's about stepping stones. Keep in mind, the real position that most Republican politicians have is that, well, okay, just let's get this out of the way right to begin with, okay? Legitimately, most Republican politicians, I don't think they care about trans people, okay? What Republican politicians care about is letting the world die to climate change by not doing anything about the oil, gas, and, coal lobbies that they are bought out by. And two, cutting taxes for wealthy people. Now, those two positions are really bad politically if you are explicit about them. So instead what they do is they maintain power by keeping their voting base distracted by a non-stop series of culture war battles. They are meaningless, and they are done expressly to distract Americans from the fact that their real positions are really, really bad. Now, Republican voters, I think, care about trans people very sincerely because they're told to, because they consume media, they watch news articles, or they watch news bits, they read articles, which are telling them essentially that the world is ending because children can think that they're the gender that they don't think that they think they are. So on and so on. Now, again, I want to be clear. I don't think Republican politicians, for the most part, care about this stuff. I also don't think they care about the consequences of pushing down that road. Meaning that if this is just step 1 to 10 years from now, like police doing mass roundups and executions of trans people, I don't think Republican politicians would care. They will lead all the way down that road and back. I do not think they care that much. It doesn't really matter the degree of sincerity they have on this issue, because this kindergarten to third grade thing is only a stepping stone to any elementary or middle school, to any schooling or public institution at all, to, the Speak Up Anti-Grooming Act, where they establish a hotline to inform the state if a parent is found to be queer in any way, shape, or form, because there's a higher risk, according to their data, of abuse to their children. And then the police show up, and and it goes and it goes and it goes. So yeah, that's why they're focusing on it. It has nothing to do with harm reduction. It has nothing to do with protecting kids. Republican politicians love raping kids. That's like one of their top things next to cutting taxes. They're hugely in favor of it. That's just yeah. Anyway.
Question Paula Stevens hears most from her first graders in Clearwater, Florida. Spoiler alert, it's not about sexual orientation or gender identity.
Oh yeah, sorry. This guy might care a little bit about trans people. Honestly, I don't know. It could just be an empty virtue signal because he lost his race and he's just trying to get, attention from the farthest right people who will galvanize support around him. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Who knows? Doesn't make a difference to me. Hey, when we're choosing people for the Roblox fun van to go to the play pit, very little distinction will be made between people who are doing this for political clout and people who are doing this for fun.
Snack time.
Stevens is puzzled by the law. After all, she says, teaching about sexual orientation and gender identity isn't in the first grade curriculum. But in class, they do talk a lot about kids' families, some with 2 moms or 2 dads.
It makes me wonder when I talk about families in my classroom, am I going to be violating this law because the children were having discussions about what their family looks like?
The law's sponsors say that's not the intent, but Stevens fears the language is so vague it will have a chilling effect, and she worries about what other topics might become a target.
There you go. The chilling effect is another big one, too. See, the more fear you cultivate around given topics, the less likely people are to speak up about it in any respect. You silence people broadly, even if the law only allows you to silence people specifically, which is the goal.
What's next? If they're going after this conversation now, where does this stop?
Beyond K through third grade, the Florida law also says any instruction about sexual orientation or gender identity in any grade has to be, quote, age appropriate. Opponents say the law will effectively muzzle any discussion out of fear. Under the law, parents can sue if they believe the school is in violation.
Honestly, I feel like it's just a blatant attack on education.
That's Jorge Botello. He teaches 8th grade American history at Osceola Middle School in rural Okeechobee, Florida. So that age-appropriate language would apply to his classes.
Of course, by the way, age appropriate here is meaningless. Like imagine trying to make a legal ruling off of the term age appropriate. It's completely meaningless. Like there's nothing, there's nothing at all there. Obviously, any person who's having any conversation with their students about anything pertaining to this, they're going to consider it age appropriate because they thought it was appropriate to discuss it with kids. Essentially, just keep in mind that age appropriate to a Republican means don't talk about it at all. Like it's a euphemism for what they actually believe.
And he gives this example. Will he still feel comfortable telling students that the Revolutionary War hero, the Prussian General von Steuben, is widely believed to have been openly gay?
When you look back in history, there's clear examples of how these different groups that are being attacked today actually helped form our country. They're a part of our story.
Botello believes lessons like that can empower LGBTQ students, weaving them into America's history. And as a Mexican American, he knows how important representation is.
People say Hamilton was gay. Yeah. Excuse me. Why isn't the video on screen? Because there is no video. It's an audio recording of the article. But I thought it'd be nice to actually listen to people's voices for once instead of just me reading it out loud. Also, my throat is sore because I haven't gotten much sleep for a while. Yes, let's just all of the founding fathers were gay and trans. It's true. What was I saying? Oh yeah. Obviously, another inherent bias here by implication is that heterosexuality is acknowledged by default in any discussion of essentially any social subject because it's kind of woven into the fabric of how we talk about people and history and society. But that is not the case for gay people. So even if you ban discussions of sexuality in a second grade history class, heterosexuality will be referenced constantly. People get married, people have children. For thousands of years, at least the hundreds that American history references, for the most part, heterosexuality was the only thing you were allowed to be. So that's the only thing that ever got really written down. You have to make an effort to include non-heterosexual narratives. And that's no more indoctrination than talking about the heterosexuality to begin with. I would argue, actually, that you're countering indoctrination when you work to oppose narratives that were brought about by indoctrination. I mean, the only reason that's the case is because of hundreds of years of anti-gay gay Christian morality. It's
He didn't see himself in the history books.
I know that I have to think a little harder when I navigate that next year, now that this bill is going to be in effect.
The new law feels like a hateful personal attack to Clinton McCracken, who has taught art for 21 years at Howard Middle School Academy of Arts in Orlando. As a gay man, he says, it tells him and his LGBTQ students that there's something inappropriate about them, that their identity is taboo or somehow dirty.
The Trevor Project found last year that 42% of LGBTQ students have considered attempting suicide. And I can tell you, as someone who grew up as a gay boy, how real that statistic is. And
all right. You know what would go a long way to improving morale? Ironing your goddamn flags before going to the protest. I'm sorry. Continue. God, that triggers me when I see it.
Dangerous it is that these Republican legislators are playing with the safety of our vulnerable youth.
McCracken is appalled when he hears DeSantis claim that schools are, in the governor's words, sexualizing kids and, quote, injecting transgenderism into the classroom.
This is a created culture war from him so that he can achieve his political ambitions. That's all this is. So I'm not teaching kids how to be gay in my classroom, but I'll tell you what I am doing. I am trying with all my power to teach kids to be okay with who they are.
McCracken says the teachers he's talked with say they won't be silenced. They'll keep on teaching just as they have been. If that means parents sue their school districts, he says, then so be it. It's still the right thing to do. Melissa Block, NPR News.
True. I feel like the article did most of the work there, but, also it was a good bit there, so. Vosh telling us to straighten our queer flags. No, don't straighten them. Flatten them. Look, okay, just, you all know. Yeah, of course. Unironed pride flag. This, all right? Listen up. If this is what your bedroom wall looks like, okay, then there's no excuse. I don't care if you're trans or whatever, okay? There's nothing, okay? Listen, all right? There is degeneracy on this wall, and it is not the colors on this flag. We rise up against the unironed brigade, all right? It's such a pretty, they're such pretty flag colors, too. This image right here was used in a news article. This is what's happening. Okay? You want them to take away your rights? The normies, the straggots, okay? They're using these pictures in their news articles. Do you want that? This bad optics, guys. Hey, listen, LGBTQ queer youth aren't like bad or worse or anything. Look at this bedroom. I see this shit. Oh boy. We're having our reactionary arc right there. This should be considered the queer equivalent of having an 18-inch tall pile of cum tissues on like next to the desk of like a teenage boy. Like you just go in there and instantly you just leave. It's disgusting. Get out. Yeah, iron your fucking flags. I'm just looking at more photos. Oh my god. Oh god. Not everyone has an iron. Just throw it in the dryer then. That'll mostly... Oh no! This is from outside Senator Bernie Sanders' office. Bernie, no! Bad advocate. Bad advocate. Fake ally. Extremely canceled. Maybe this is solidarity. Maybe this is like him showing support for the real transes. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't some phony corporate ironed flag. This is the real heart of the queer movement. A bunch of little square fold marks. All right, I'm sorry. We're not done with the segment. This is just a departure. Okay. Okay. Anyway, continuing. We are seeing right now an unprecedented surge in anti-LGBT legislation. Something like 250 anti-LGBT bills have been introduced in state legislatures since the year began, and we're like a third of the way through the year too. Or, yeah. So, breaking: Utah legislator overrides Governor Cox's veto of anti-trans sports bill. Now, there was a bit of good discourse here for a bit, because this is about, biological males not playing with women and blah-de-blah. But I feel like initially, the Republican governor vetoed this bill after it passed the state Senate. He blocked the bill, and then it got overridden by the legislator. So high is the support for fucking with trans people. HB 11 was hastily pushed through the Senate and heavily amended on the last night of Utah's legislative session, with members of leadership in both houses voting against or not voting. In a letter explaining his veto, Cox cited high suicide rates amongst trans youth. That's nice. And added that there are only 4 trans students playing high school sports in all of Utah, only one of whom is playing girls' sports. That is correct. The state legislator put out a bill targeting one person in the entire state of Utah. Technically, it bans trans students from participating in school sports consistently, but it's obviously about trans women, not about trans men. They don't care about trans men for reasons we've talked about before. This is in response to one person, one single girl. That's it. Yeah, they might as well have just written a law with her name in it. I live in Utah. They can constantly make articles about that girl. Listen, the anti-trans sports shit is the biggest psyop in the fucking world, okay? When people, listen, okay? Are there interesting, like, sports science claims to make on either side here, okay? Sure, all right? But anyone who equates or equivocates to suggest that there's, like, a legitimate concern about trans women and women's sports, no, there isn't. There's not. It's just completely fucking made up. This is the most ridiculous, made up shit. Like, the way conservatives talk about it, you'd think that trans women were dominating records everywhere all the time. They're not. That's not true. There are barely any trans women in all of America competing against other women in athletic fields. And additionally, like, you remember how the rioting was bad for BLM, but the way conservatives hyperfixated on it to distract from the broader issue is what we, like, tried to push against. This is like that, except in this case, the rioting, which in this case is trans women and women's sports, isn't even provably bad at all, and at the very worst is utterly fucking insignificant. And also, the thing they're trying to distract from isn't BLM, it's the very idea that trans people should be allowed the same civil rights as cis people. I have no respect whatsoever for this particular line of inquiry. If a person has legitimate concerns about trans people well, let's be real, trans women in women's sports, the proper and most rhetorically correct response is to shit on their head, and make them eat your poop. Make them eat your shit and hair. That's the most. So Socrates, he would have said, this is sort of the ideal argumentative form in response to their inquiry. I don't mind the discourse, okay, but I'm not discoursing this with a conservative. Like, if they want to talk about the biology, here's what I want to talk about. Why the fuck are legislators passing bills like this to affect one person who isn't even, like, breaking all records in their field? Like, how, like, what, like, why is that happening? You know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. I really want to talk more about the wave of anti-LGBT legislation that's been coming out. I want to have Keffels on stream at some point in the indefinite future, maybe, if she's interested, but that's mostly because she covered it a bunch and did, like, a charity thing. If not, maybe I'll just, like, go through a bunch of articles, or I'll find someone else. We'll have to see. There's so much has been going on. It's been absolutely wild. I had this here just because it was so funny. We also had, and by the way, this has been scientifically measured, the least creepy and least pedophilic statement ever made by a Republican. This is as good as it gets, actually. So this is from Andrew Giuliani, the son of Rudy Giuliani, who you may recall if you paid any attention to anything going on for several years. But it's actually so bad that I need to have the quote up on screen so that I don't get clip-chimped for saying what he said out loud. Giuliani's comments delivered at a Long Island rally by a far-right group came amid remarks condemning options for trans people. He spoke about his 4-month-old daughter. Oh no. saying he is, quote, gonna be the last guy in a long time that looks under the hood right there, end quote. She, open quote, made a promise to me on the first day, right? My wife was sleeping and I'm holding her, my daughter, in my arms, and I get emotional thinking about it, but she made a promise with me. She shook my hand and I said, I'm the only boyfriend till you're 25 years old. Shake hands. Shook my hand, so I have changed the diapers. I have looked under the hood. She's a woman. I'm gonna be the last guy in a long time under the hood right there. That looks under the hood right there. But guess what? She was born a woman and she's gonna stay a woman. It's that simple. So anyway, hats off to Andrew here for, again, the least pedophilic, least creepy statement ever made publicly in any series of sentences by a Republican. Remarkable stuff here. I don't even feel I need to comment on this. I'm not going to. If I were to say anything about this, I would be implying that when I finished, there's not more to say, and there is always more to say. Yeah, I guess the only thing I have to say here is really this. In response to the last bit, she was born a woman and she's going to stay a woman. It's that simple. Sir, that is a baby. That is not a woman. That is a baby. Yeah. It's actually really, really weird. It's actually genuinely extremely weird. Can you imagine if you came of age, like old enough to like pay attention to what's going on in the world, like you're 10 or 11 or 12, and you go online and you see that your dad made a comment like that about you when you were 4 months old, you know? That is, I'd die. Oh, I would. Oh, listen, maybe I'd die, but I wouldn't be the only one dying. I'd be the second or possibly third person to die in that particular. Yeah. That would turn me trans out of spite right there. You know, I would actually, you know, people say it's a choice, it's not a choice. I don't really care. In that instance, it would be a choice. I would simply will myself to be trans through sheer force of will. You know. Also, wait, the only guy... Wait, what about a doctor? Okay, nothing. No, okay.